It didn't end when Sunday church let out. It continued in the places where the Bible was still being spoken, not in hymns, but in the hiss of cast iron, the clatter of spoons against serving plates, the blessing of hot cornbread wrapped in cloth. We passed through doors everyone already knew, doors that needed no signs. The smell told you everything. Pork fat simmering low with cabbage, chicken fried in oil seasoned by 1,000 meals, sweet potato pie cooling by the window like an offering. Inside the light was amber. Not harsh. Not fluorescent. Warm. Like it had passed through honey. Families sat in vinyl booths wearing their Sunday clothes, ties loosened, heels kicked off beneath the tables, but still dressed for reverence. At long communal tables, strangers sat side by side, strangers who wouldn't feel like strangers by the time dessert came. The plates were heavy, filled not just with food, but with memory. Dishes carried from Mississippi kitchens and Georgia back porches, taught by grandmothers who never wrote recipes down. The owners moved through the room like pastors among a congregation. They knew your name. They knew your grandmother's name. They asked about your son at Howard, your daughter's new job, the cousin who had just come up from Alabama looking for work. Even if money was tight that week, the food still came. Pay when you can, baby. Honor wasn't negotiable here. Portion size wasn't either. Children perched at the edges of tables, legs swinging, ears wide open. We learned the rhythm of adult conversation, the laughter that followed pain, the silence that followed certain names, the code switching between what could be said aloud and what had to be whispered. We watched our parents not just as authority figures, but as people who had survived, who were still surviving, who needed this room as much as air. Between long pulls of stretching macaroni and cheese, we absorbed lessons no school could teach us. How to organize, how to protect one another, how to turn a meal into a meeting, a restaurant into a movement hub. These weren't just businesses. They were embassies of a nation within a nation. When you stepped inside after a week of being diminished, unseen, suspected, you felt recognized. The walls held photographs, Martin, Malcolm, and local heroes, whose names never made the papers, but whose faces we honored anyway. Someone's aunt worked the register. Someone's uncle ran the grill. The money stayed in the community because the community was the restaurant, and the restaurant was the community. The sweet tea was perfect, always. Sweet enough to make your teeth ache, gentle enough to soothe your spirit. Old men played dominoes in the corner, slamming tiles down like judges delivering verdicts. Mothers fed babies while discussing school board meetings, and which landlord was trying to raise the rent again. Teenagers flirted by the jukebox, dropping coins for Al Green, Marvin Gaye, songs about longing and belonging that mainstream radio had forgotten. Then the neighborhood changed. Not all at once. Slowly, like water pulling back from shore. Rents rose. Chain restaurants opened. Cheaper, cleaner, stripped of memory. Younger generations wanted something different. Something that didn't taste like the past. That didn't require sitting and listening. The owners grew older. Their children became lawyers and engineers and moved to suburbs where there was no corner left for a restaurant like this, and no community that needed feeding in the same way. The doors closed one by one. Windows that once fogged from hundreds of conversations now held falling suns. Driving past felt like a pull too. The place where something vital once lived now filled with nothing but air and air. What we lost wasn't just fried chicken. It was the table where we were home. It was knowing there was somewhere go. So unquestioned, unburdened. It was the smell of home in a city that didn't always feel. It was an owner who remembered you at 6 years old and watched as you brought your own 6-year-old through the same door. When those restaurants disappeared, a kind of sanctuary went with them. And some of us still ache for what they gave us. Not the food, but the feeling of being held by a place that loved you before you even sat down.